A huge thank you to patron Ilamize Poulis for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/Name Explain, which will be linked down below. Anyway, Alaska is often seen as one of the more barren and empty states of the United States of America. With a population of just over 730,000, it is the third least populated state, with just Vermont and Wyoming having fewer people. This emptiness is juxtaposed by its huge size. It is by far the largest of the states too, with a land area of just over 660,000 miles squared. The second largest state is Texas with just under 270,000 miles squared, meaning Alaska is way more than double its size. Make no mistake about it, Alaska is huge, despite how much smaller it can often appear on maps. Yet, what the state lacks in people and big cities, it more than makes up for with its vast, incredible natural beauty and stunning wildlife. It is often seen as the last place in the USA that is well and truly wild. This is even reflected in its official nickname of the last frontier. It's odd how Alaska now has this image of being empty and desolate, as in the far past it was very much the gateway to human life in not just the USA, but on the Americas as a whole. One of the most widely held theories on the arrival of the first humans in the Americas is that they crossed over the Bering Land Bridge, which once connected what is now Russia and Alaska together. These people would have first arrived in Alaska before migrating all across this land, and over the generations all these different people would have become the various indigenous peoples of North and South America. As Alaska was the first port of call for many of the natives of this huge land, it's unsurprising that it became such a hotbed for not only different groups of people, but their languages too. Hundreds of native languages sprung up in what we now call the state of Alaska, spoken in communities who not only survived, but thrived in the harsh conditions that Alaska brings, which would probably scare most of us away. Alaska would not be left to its own devices forever, however. European colonization came for this entire continent, and when these outsiders came to be the dominant forces in the land, bringing their weapons and diseases many natives weren't prepared for, the native way of life started to fade away into the background and the depths of this land. This happened all across what Europeans would dubbing the New World, and it was the same case for Alaska. Alaska is the second most recent state to join the Union, becoming an official state on the 3rd of January 1959, just a few months before Hawaii joined too. By the time of its admission to the Union, those hundreds of native tongues had dwindled to around just 20 or so, as well as some dialect forms of those native languages too. Thankfully, since 1959, those 20 languages are still around. These native languages of Alaska are some of the most unique and remote tongues on our planet, with populations ranging from a few thousand to just a handful of speakers. A key reason as to why they are so unique is because they come from a completely different origin to many other languages. Most languages are compiled into groups we call language families, with those families having branches which house families that are more alike. Take the Indo-European language family. It contains branches like the Romance branch, which houses languages like French and Italian, the Germanic branch which houses the likes of English and German, and the sprawling Indo-Aryan branch which houses Bengali, Sanskrit and Hindustani. This means that languages as different as French and Sanskrit are actually related to one another, albeit very distantly. The native languages of Alaska, meanwhile, are not part of the Indo-European language family, nor are they part of any of the other major language families on our planet like the Afro-Asiatic family, the Atlantic Congo family, or the Sino-Tibetan family. Most of Alaska's native languages instead belong to two language families that are more or less isolated to just this part of the world. This means they have very little, if anything at all, in common with other languages found across the globe. But in the same way French and Italian have common ground, languages within these families will share some similarities. Take the Inuit-Aleut family an example. This family splits into two major branches, unsurprisingly called the Inuit branch and the Aleut branch. A common trend among these languages is their soft consonant sounds and how they form new words, with suffixes being added to the end of existing words. The Aleut branch contains just a single language, which is simply called Aleut. It is primarily native to the peninsula and chains of islands found in the southwest of the state, spoken by the natives also named the Aleut people. Today, however, the language is critically endangered with less than 100 native speakers. The secondary branch of this family, the Inuit branch, has 4 languages found in Alaska, though the Inuit branch has stretched out further, with there also being Inuit languages found across Canada and Russia too. One of Alaska's Inuit languages is called Aleutic. This is found just north of the previously mentioned Aleut language and has an equally small speaking population of just under 100 or so people. Then we have the two Yupik languages. Central Yupik can unsurprisingly be found in the center of the state, and thankfully has just shy of 20,000 speakers, which might not sound like too much, but is a huge amount relative to other indigenous Alaskan languages. The other Yupik language has a much smaller speaking population of just 70 people. It's spoken on St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Strait and is called Siberian Yupik. This name harkens back to the deep link this part of the world has with Russia, and would ultimately come from people migrating here from Siberia. The final Inuit language spoken widely in Alaska is called Inupiaq. This has just over 1,200 speakers, and its speaking population are found across the northernmost portions of the state. The other large language family of Alaska is called the Na-Dene family, also known as the Athabaskan Eyak Tlingit family. This latter name reflects the three key branches of it: Athabaskan, Eyak, and Tlingit. It's also known as just AET too, so let's go with that name that is far less of a mouthful. The AET family also includes languages found outside of Alaska too. There are some in Canada, but also these speakers in the far past traversed to the south of what is now the US and formed the language of Navajo too. The Tlingit and Eyak branches both contain singular languages of the same name. Tlingit is spoken along the southern border area between Alaska and Canada, and once again only has around 50 or so speakers. Eyak meanwhile is spoken west of here, and when I say is, what I really mean is was, as the final speaker died in the 2000s. Since then, however, there has been an attempt to revive it of sorts. The Athabaskan branch, however, contains way more languages, most of which live in the more central part of the state and along the Alaskan-Canadian border. This includes languages like Aftna, Tanana, Dekhitan, Holikachuk, Upper Kuskokwim, Kyokon, Tanana, Upper Tanana, Tanaklos, Hin, and Gwich'in. These are some languages with seriously small speaking populations. The most spoken of them is Gwich'in, with a whopping 500 plus people, but many others have speakers ranging from around 60 to just 1 or 2 people. Yet all these languages across the AET family have things in common too. Their consonant sounds are a lot more vocal when compared to the languages of the Inuit-Aleut family, and they form new words by adding prefixes to the start of their words, the opposite of what the Inuit-Aleut family does with their words. There are 2 other native languages spoken in Alaska too. What makes these 2 unique is the fact they don't belong to either of the aforementioned families. They can both be found in the far southeast of the state. Tsimshian is part of the smaller Tsimshianic family, which also has a couple languages in Canada too. The language has a relatively large population of 270 plus, but most of those people are in Canada as opposed to Alaska. The other is a language called Haida, which is spoken on Prince of Wales Island in Alaska, as well as the Haida Gwaii Islands, which are actually Canadian. What differentiates this language from all the others is the fact it's believed to have no relation to any of them. In fact, it is seemingly not related to any language at all, making it one of the world's isolated languages. However, only around 12 people actually speak this unique tongue. This is a huge amount of native languages, and this video is just a simple overview of them all. They are undoubtedly some of the most remote and unheard of languages on the planet. But if we are speaking about languages spoken across all of Alaska, and not just ones native to the land, then we really ought to mention English too, right? English is by far the dominant tongue of the state. Even many of these indigenous people will also speak English. English came to be the language of Alaska down to the fact it's part of the USA. Alaska was actually purchased by the USA in 1867 for the sum of $7.2 million. It was actually purchased from Russia, who had previously claimed the land. This means that Russian was once spoken in the state too, and still is to some degree. Alaskan Russia is its own form of the tongue, and even to this day, it still has some speakers found across the state. While English rules the roost in the last frontier today, those native tongues do thankfully get their own spotlight and protection. The USA famously has no official language. Certain states, meanwhile, can choose to adopt official languages. South Dakota, in example, has English as its official language, along with its native tongue of Sioux. Alaska takes this one step further. While it does have English as an official language, most of the native tongues I previously mentioned also have official status too. This allows Alaska to celebrate its unique languages in a way very few other states have or really can. It also allows these languages to hopefully be protected and let them have way more public knowledge language and raises their chances of survival. Even so, many linguists fear that many of these tongues will die out entirely in just the near future. So let's celebrate and share these languages in any way we can, even if it's just by making a silly little YouTube video where I butcher most of their pronunciations. Yeah, sorry about that anyone watching from Alaska. I try my best and genuinely research these pronunciations, but I'm not particularly fluent in the indigenous languages of Alaska. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/NameExplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.